So you've read up on the ingredients of vaccines, and you discovered that they contain substances known to be harmful to the human body. You confirmed that some of them contain fetal cells, which are copied from human babies that were murdered many years ago for research purposes. You found some articles that links certain vaccines to causing autism or other health complications. You did your homework, you documented or you prayed, and you've just decided that you have medical, personal, philosophical, or religious objections to vaccines for your kids. Congratulations, you filthy anti-vaxxer. Your refusal has killed countless booger-wiping children and severely obese grandparents. How could you? Obviously, I say that last part in jest. But seriously, when you decide to take a personal stand against the recommended vaccines because you're just not personally comfortable with them, you don't want them to be given to your children, you're going to be labeled an anti-vaxxer, a science denier. They're going to call you conspiracy theorists. But you know what? When they sling those names at you, here's what I want you to do. Rejoice! Because you're in good company, folks. Now that you know what today's episode's about, let's not waste time, because kids need saving and protecting. The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion. Before I proceed, I have some great news. The Lion Tribe has a brand new business account, and we can receive donations directly to the company. I created a donation link through GiveSendGo. The link will be in the description below this video. Feel free to just click on it. And if you support the cause of the Lion Tribe, which is to protect children at all stages of life from physical, psychological, and spiritual harm, then please give to this organization. I'm trying to grow this company because I want to use it to protect kids. Okay, so on August 1st, The Defender put out an article titled Infant Vaccines Linked to Increase in All-Cause Mortality. New Research Shows. This is by Angelo De Palma, PhD. I want to read some of this to you. So it starts out, quote, developed nations requiring the most neonatal vaccine doses tend to have the worst childhood mortality rates, according to a peer-reviewed study published July 20th in Curious Journal of Medical Science. Health authorities emphasize that vaccines save lives, lead author Neil Miller told The Defender. Yet our data suggests that when developed nations require 2 versus 0 neonatal vaccine doses, or many versus fewer vaccines during infancy, there may be unintended consequences that increase all-cause mortality. Now let me pause. Just to clarify and remind my audience, all-cause mortality literally means mortality caused by all kinds of things, okay? Often when studies are done looking at mortality, they're only looking at specific causes of the mortality. They might look at a blood clot. They might look at seizures. They might look at SIDS for babies, sudden infant death syndrome. But this looks at all-cause mortality. So they might find like heart conditions that came upon a child all of a sudden. All right, moving on. Miller, director of the Institute of Medical and Scientific Inquiry in Santa Fe, New Mexico, has been researching this topic since the early 2000s. In a 2011 paper with the same co-author, Gary S. Goldman, PhD, an independent computer scientist, they showed that developed countries requiring the most vaccine doses for infants had the least favorable infant mortality rates. Earlier this year, they replicated those results using updated data and responded to critics of their findings. In their latest study, Miller and Goldman expanded the scope of their earlier analyses to consider the effects of 2 vaccines, hepatitis B, and tuberculosis, both typically given soon after birth. The study calculated the effect of these shots on mortality rates for neonates. Neonates is classified as up to 28 days post-birth, infants up to 1 year, and children under 5. Analyses were all based on separate data from 2019 and 2021. Mortality data and vaccine schedules were collected from UNICEF, the World Health Organization, and national governments. All right, and then skipping on down a couple quotes later, the defender writes, "Our findings would be considered moderate correlations, which are statistically significant," Miller said. The correlations are positive, meaning that the more vaccine doses given, the higher the mortality. In these circumstances, health authorities expect to see negative correlations, that is, a decline in mortality, with more vaccine doses. So, any statistically significant positive correlation is a genuine concern, Miller said. And then moving on down further in the article, it states, relying on all-cause mortality instead of vaccine-induced injury or some other subjective assessment of cause of death greatly reduces what is termed diagnostic bias. While considerable uncertainty may exist regarding why someone died, the death itself is not in question. The article's author also does admit that there's a weakness in the study. And right here's where he says it. Although using all-cause mortality data reduces many sources of bias, it considers only inputs and outputs. In this case, vaccine doses and death. It ignores everything that happens before the dose and between the shots and death. So it's acknowledging the fact that other things could have caused the death. So that's why it requires further study. So it says, this means some unknown factor may be at work causing vaccinated children to expire. There. But the positive correlation between vaccine doses and mortality is most easily explained by the conclusion that the number of lives saved by preventing deadly infections is fewer than the number of lives lost from increased susceptibility to other serious health threats. Now, that's a good point, and just from this article alone, I'm curious to read this study in detail, this curious study. It could be yet another prompt that would encourage scientists to look further into vaccine safety data. Speaking of vaccine safety, I want to make sure that my audience is aware of a major fact involving manufacturers of vaccines that are given to your children and your grandchildren. All vaccine manufacturers are immune to lawsuits. That means if any vaccine-induced injury or death occurs to our children, we can't sue the manufacturer directly. Can you name any other product available to consumers? Think about it. Cars, food, amusement parks, tools. If you use a product appropriately, as it's intended, or you consume something as it's been cooked, if there was negligence involved, mishandling, and it causes you injury or death, you can sue for damages. You can sue telling that company, listen, you did a terrible job with that product and you're going to pay for it financially. And that fear of lawsuits is a major motivator to keep companies providing the best products and services that they can. So let me ask, what incentive do vaccine manufacturers have exactly that would make them want to produce the best possible vaccines out there? If that doesn't give you all a little bit of pause regarding the vaccines given to children, maybe this video will.
That is a fair characterization. We had looked for many years to find a pre-licensing safety trial of any of the 72 vaccines doses that are now essentially mandated. They're recommended, but that's effectively mandated for American children.
Correct. School-age children have to be updated on all these mandated shots before public schools and daycares will allow them to attend.
And we have not been able to find any. And every other medication requires, prior to licensing by FDA, that the company perform a safety trial that compares health outcomes in a placebo group and a similarly situated vaccine group. My assumption was that was done for vaccines. We found out that it hadn't been, that it was not. They were exempt.
Now, vaccine exemptions can be requested, and they vary by state, but medical exemptions are hard enough to obtain. So getting any sort of exemption for your kids is made even harder in the handful of states where religious exemptions are denied. Which states are those, you might ask? Here they are. So, for all my folks in the red state of West Virginia and all these other states that don't allow religious exemptions for vaccines, every single lawmaker who refuses to pick up a bill or promote religious freedom bills that would allow for religious exemptions for vaccines, they are trampling on your right to freedom of religion. How can we freely practice our religion if we cannot get a religious or philosophical exemption for our own children? Are you mad enough to fight yet? I know I am, and I have been. If you recall, the Lion Tribe was advocating for the passage of Senate Bill 535. Now, this was during West Virginia's regular legislative session earlier this year. This is a bill that would have liberated parents from forcing vaccines on their kids just to put them in public daycare or public schools, because that bill was designed to allow religious and philosophical exemptions. Again, it's already a violation of our religious liberty to force us to take vaccines that go against our personal spiritual convictions. West Virginia Metro News wrote an article about SB 535 at that time, and it was titled, "Medical Professionals Expressing Concern About Anti-Vaccination Bill." Here's some of that article. Dr. Jeffrey Lancaster, a pediatrician and hospitalist serving as the Associate Chief Medical Officer of WVU Medicine Children's Hospital, spoke on WVUM's and the state medical community's concerns about the bill. "It is very incongruent with the process for the medical exemption," he said. "There's really no rigor to getting an exemption if this one passes." Answering why they're looking at this bill, among all others, he noted it has 12 sponsors. The 2 physician senators are not among them, and it appears to be gaining traction at the Capitol. Only 6 more senators would have to vote for it to send it to the House. Lancaster said bills like this can spring up in Charleston without the complete awareness of the state's residents. The vast majority of parents support school-age vaccinations, and parents who have kids who have medical reasons for not getting vaccinated appreciate that their children's peers are vaccinated for the herd immunity that it provides. "I'm worried that this bill is not the will of the people of the state," he said. "We trust our elected officials to represent the needs and wants of West Virginians, and I hope that they really consider the negative health consequences for children with this bill." One thing I want to point out is anytime a doctor, nurse, or other healthcare professional is advocating for forcing medications, shots, any kind of medical treatments upon patients through government statutes, through government, they are technically violating their own medical ethics. Because in medicine, patients who are alert and oriented to themselves, to their environments, they have full capacity to make their own medical decisions. It is a recognized patient right to refuse any and all medical treatments, even if it means that they will become less healthy. They will decline, especially for those who are already have poor prognoses and they're going to die within the next month or so. They still have the right to refuse and die with dignity. Part of dignity is giving people a choice. All right? Here's the thing. My primary concerns regarding vaccine safety are my own kids. Everyone else's kids are secondary to my concerns. Sounds harsh, I know, but that's my natural fatherly instinct kicking in. And I hope everybody has similar protective mindsets about their own kids and grandkids. If others, like me and my wife, have researched vaccine ingredients and are not buying the safe and effective mantras of Big Pharma, so be it. It is neither a child's doctor nor a politician's choice, ultimately, about the health care of our children. A doctor helps guide healthcare choices by recommending and at times even debating with patients about the best options. Patients and parents, I should say. It wasn't long ago that Americans had the pleasures of being mocked and ostracized by medical professionals, media personalities, and politicians for refusing the COVID quaccines. Did any of you notice that your family doctors, pediatricians, and employers were pushing just a little bit too forcefully to get you to take those jabs that you didn't trust? What do you think was pushing them so hard? Or do you think they were just looking out for the public's best interest? You think the family doctor that you have been seeing for years is always only looking out for your best interest? Well, take a look at these screenshots shared by Dr. Robert Malone. So, knowing that physicians and healthcare institutions were being financially incentivized to get us and our children jabbed with the safe and effective COVID shots, and the fact that our vaccine manufacturers are immune to lawsuits, what makes you all think that money is not the driving force behind every other vaccine on the market? Maybe, just maybe, it's time that you and I and everyone around us do a little bit more digging into the things that our so-called public health experts are wanting us to put into ours and our children's bodies. If we aren't allowed to show some skepticism, hesitancy, or even outright refusal, then we're not really being given a choice, are we? And if we're not being given choices, if we're being robbed of our choices, then why are we just sitting around like a bunch of little teeny weenies twiddling our thumbs? We don't need any more weenies around, because to gain some ground in our fight for liberty, we need to be bold as lions.